From the land of conjurers, flying through the internet to your device like a UAP, hauntingly unexplained and downright weird. This is the witching hours, and we are ready to take off in the flash of an eye. Good evening to one and all, wherever and whenever you are listening to this program. I am Johnny the Frost, and joining me, as always, is the medium Jenny Lee. Jenny, you want to get weird?
Always.
All right. Well, that's good. That's good because that's what we do here on the Witching Hours. Welcome in, everyone.
That's the right answer.
That was the correct answer. I guess one night you can answer no, and then
I could be like, nah, I'm good.
Not tonight. Welcome in, everyone. Thank you for the raid, Void Whisper Loose. We appreciate it. And welcome in, everybody. We're glad to have you here. We're glad that you are here for a really great show tonight. I think we're really guest that we're going to have a guest I'm really ready to talk to. So get ready. And if you have any questions about, well, ET and crashes and retrievals and the government cover-ups tonight, we're going to get into it. So I'm really excited about that. A couple other things to talk about. One, thank you everyone who's gone over and followed us on our YouTube page. It's been, for us, it's been a tremendous amount of growth. Like we were trying to get to 200 and we're just sailing past that and it's going so well. So thank you, all of you, for all of your help in supporting this show. It really does mean a lot. And I want to thank you for that. And also for most people that already know from Medium Jenny Lee's stream, we have a little excursion that's going to be happening in June. We have the Team Weird Takeover at Lake Shawnee Abandoned Amusement Park, and we're going to be heading out there June 7th and 8th, and that's going to be a good old time. We're going to go out there. We're going to spend the night. We have the park all to Team Weird.
Yes.
So it's going to be just us at the park once the sun goes down, and we are going to have
us and the spooks.
We're going to have a full night. We're going to have
it's
all
the
kinds of things we're going to do out there. Record some witching hours out there. We're going to do some channeling. Medium Jenny's going to do some channeling, possibly a gallery reading, paranormal investigation. Maybe we can do some sky watching.
Craft time with Priestess of Wonderland.
I mean, we have a ton of stuff, and we're going to, throughout the rest of this year and into next year, be kind of announcing guests of the program and people like that who are going to join us out there to do some cool stuff. So we'll have more news coming for that soon. We're going to try to have an announcement for when we're going to have tickets up for sale soon. Tickets are going to be probably a little over 100, somewhere in that range, and we're not making a profit off of it at all. We're putting in the cost to get into into Lake Shawnee, and then we're also
to feed you guys
the money to get pizza and tacos because that's what Team Weird eats, I think. So we'll have that. So we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun time, and hopefully we get to meet so many of Team Weird who have been hanging out with us. So there we go. We ready to get into some news, Jenny?
What's the news today?
What is the news? All right. Well, first off, we have a monster X-class flare launches massive solar storm towards Earth and could trigger auroras this weekend. The sun just unleashed one of its largest solar explosions in recent years, temporarily causing radio blackout on Earth and spitting out a coronal mass ejection that will likely collide with our planet this weekend. The sun has unleashed an enormous X-class solar flare, temporarily triggering a radio blackout above parts of the United States and unleashing a hefty coronal mass ejection that will slam into our planet. The X-class solar flare, the most powerful type the sun can produce, exploded outward near the solar equator at around 6 p.m. on October 1st. The flare has a magnitude of X7.1, making it the second most powerful solar explosion on the current solar cycle.
Scary.
The most powerful flare was a monster 8.7 magnitude in May. When the CME hits our planet, it will likely trigger a disturbance in the magnetosphere known as a geomagnetic storm that enables solar particles to penetrate deep into the atmosphere and trigger vibrant aurora displays at unusually low altitudes. So still very busy on the solar front. Story number 2.
I heard that the actual like climax of all of that isn't even supposed to be till next summer.
It's possible. Yeah. We talked about it in the last story. Like it's you don't know for sure. But it's we're hitting peak. I think we've hit the peak at this point, but
That's scary.
we'll see. Story
Auroras
number
are pretty, but it's pretty scary.
well, it keeps coming. Here's another interesting one. It goes along with what we were talking about. West Virginia announces paranormal trail celebrating the state's spooky sites. The state of West Virginia, almost heaven, West Virginia.
That's where we're going.
Is embracing the spooky season of October with a new statewide paranormal trail. The trail is designed to help guide residents and visitors to some of the mountain state's most spine-chilling sites. An accompanying digital passport allows visitors to check in at haunted locations, earn points, and unlock prizes along the way. Recent trends have shown us that travelers are increasingly interested in spooky and unique destinations, West Virginia Department of Tourism Secretary Chelsea Ruby said.
Good job,
in the
West
news
Virginia.
released. West Virginia has quite a few spots with haunted histories, so we created the Paranormal Trail to tap into the thriving market for themed tours and attractions. Whether it's learning about local legends or touring notoriously haunted attractions, it appeals to travelers interested in spooky sites, mystery, and local lore. Some of those sites include the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, the West Virginia Penitentiary, the Mothman Museum, and
Joe
Lake
was already
Shawnee.
saying Mothman, and
Lake
of course,
Shawnee
Lake Shawnee,
Abandoned
where we're
Amusement
going.
Park. So there we go. So where we're headed to this summer has made it onto the list for the Paranormal Trail. Hurricane Helena has become one of the deadliest hurricanes of the modern era.
It just keeps
Death toll
sounding worse and worse.
Yeah, expected to rise, has become one of the deadliest hurricanes in the United States, at least since the emergence of modern weather forecasting.
Wow.
There has been at least 167 deaths in 6 states as a result of the storm. Flooding, wind, and storm surge inundated communities from the southeast to the southern Appalachians. Many people still are unaccounted for. The current death toll ranks 3rd highest among hurricanes that have made landfall in the United States since 2000. Trailing only Maria and Katrina. It's already surpassed Ian, as well as the death toll from the superstorm Sandy. Many of the deaths have occurred in the mountains of western North Carolina, which suffered catastrophic flooding after more than 20 to 30 inches of rain fell in less than 3 days. And deaths reported all the way from Florida to as far north as where we're at here in Virginia. So it was an absolutely devastating storm, and one that I didn't realize was going to be as devastating as it was until after it was over, because we aren't that far away from where like some tremendously bad flooding happened. And a matter of fact, where we moved from is still under like flood warnings. So,
wow.
We actually moved closer to the ocean. So we were thinking that we were moving more into hurricane territory. We didn't really have to worry about it before. But, we were talking a little about this before, Jenny. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because we got a lot to do tonight. But
that hurricane formed in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, it's like
that's unheard of.
So many times, like being someone who is kind of always on the East Coast. I mean, most of these storms usually, used to ride up the coast. They'd hit Florida, they'd come across, they'd ride up the. So many of them are kind of going into the interior of the country now. It just seems like there's a different pattern that happens. That could just be my ignorance of it. But just from the outside looking in, I don't remember. I remember more just kind of riding up the coast, and it seems into a different thing now.
Yeah.
And I just found out about this recently. Some of you might have more awareness of it than I do. A port strike called at East, and as Gulf Coast cargo facilities and dock workers walk off the job. Thousands of dock workers from ports all the way from New England to Texas went on strike just after midnight on Tuesday, rallying for higher pay and more job security. The work stoppage, the first at East and Gulf Coast ports since 1977, follows a lengthy impasse on labor talks between the International Longshoremen Association and the United States Maritime Alliance, a shipping industry group representing terminal operators and ocean carriers. And what we have here is about 25,000 workers that have gone on strike, and just about every port between New England and the Gulf Coast is shut down, including the one in Virginia, down here in Norfolk. And we have a holiday season right around the corner here, and that means
luckily Joe said it's temporarily lifted already.
Already. See, breaking news right here.
Breaking news from Joe Cunningham. Thanks, Joe.
Because
Special
this is a serious.
Joe Cunningham.
That's actually, that's actually really important because there were already runs starting to happen on stores today. We were already getting ready. The great toilet paper shortage of 2020 was starting to rear its ugly head again.
It's a good thing we stocked up on it this time. We got
there were news places out at the Costco's. People were starting to hit the stores hard, and they were projecting a lot of devastation. So it's something to keep our eyes on. And like I said, we usually don't talk politics or anything on this show, but I felt like this news story was pretty big just because it could have, we know how big of an impact that can have.
Joe said that was about 10 minutes ago. They've temporarily lifted it. So there
we go. Well, that's good. But so we'll see what happens. Hopefully that's going to be a permanent. And then the last news story for tonight is going to be specifically, we need to talk to Alyson about this real quick when she comes on for the moon phase update here in just a second. How Earth's temporary second moon will impact zodiac signs. Once in a blue moon, there is an energy shifting celestial event for zodiac signs. And one of these rare times has come, considering an asteroid known as 2024 PT5 and nicknamed the mini moon was captured by Earth's gravity and pulled into orbit on September 29th. And since the object will continue orbiting alongside the moon until November 25th, psychic Ivana Noskova advised preparing to feel its effects over the next 2 months. Real quick, they essentially said that it might be an intense energetic period, and it's important to be patient and observe the outcomes and their potential impact on us. Since the moon symbolizes emotions and self-reflection, its alignment with this asteroid is expected to greatly intensify feelings and emotional experiences. So that's a
well, let's get Alyson on here
at the moment. So let's bring Alyson on to get the moon phase update for October. Welcome on, Alyson.
Hi, Alyson.
Hi. I was wondering if you were going to bring that up because everybody keeps asking me what I think about it.
So what do you think about it?
I mean, I honestly think we don't know. We don't know what effect it's going to have on us because this has never happened before, with the exception of there is a theory that at one point in time, the Earth did have 2 moons and they collided into each other and formed the moon that we currently have. But that's just a theory. And I think we're just going to have to wait around and see what happens. I think there's 2 different camps of some people think that it is, like you said, going to enhance the effects of our current moon, being over emotional and experiencing double what we usually feel with the moon.
Sounds fun.
And then there's other people that think that it's has this energy of something just coming into your life and having some effect on it and then leaving. So to expect unexpected things to happen and that it'll just move out of your life.
It is such a temporary thing.
Out of the blue, or just some event happening that you're just not expecting, and then it just disappears and it goes away.
It'll be a short-lived thing, whether we're crying or yelling at each other or surprised. So what's coming up for October for us?
Well, yesterday we had a solar eclipse in Libra. So we're starting off this month with Libra energy, which is the scales of justice and balance. And eclipses are often going to kind of bring things unexpectedly to the surface and kind of knock your scales out of balance. So the beginning of the month is kind of about finding equilibrium, integrating what came up for you during the eclipse. We've already moved into Scorpio, or the moon has already moved into Scorpio today, early this morning. So I kind of see that as whatever came up for you during the eclipse, moving into this water energy can help cleanse and clear and kind of explore that shadow that may have come up for you. But I do feel this moon cycle and the last moon cycle are kind of connected to each other because of the eclipses. They're kind of joined together because every solar eclipse is joined with a lunar eclipse, which happened in the last moon cycle 2 weeks ago. So it's almost like these two cycles are like linked together. So I think that the rest of this month is kind of giving us time to integrate whatever came up for you last month. Especially because next week from October 7th through the 13th, Pluto is going direct. So this is the start of retrograde-apalooza coming to an end.
Oh, good.
And yeah, so Pluto's the planet of transformation. And so I think that having this go direct right after the eclipses kind of helps you continue with your own personal evolution if you've been feeling stuck and kind of like bogged down. The rest of the planets, Saturn won't go direct until November. Neptune and Chiron is December, and then Uranus and Jupiter's next year. So Pluto is kind of the start of this, which I like that it's Pluto because I don't know, we're all of us in Team Weird are trying to like transform and become the best version of ourselves and learn and grow. So I think like Pluto going direct is like a way to like keep pushing us forward and continue to evolve. October 14th through the 20th, we've got our full moon in Aries. So I think this full moon is going to be closing out the eclipse season, even though it's a regular full moon. I think the Aries full moon has this ability to kind of burn and transform, rise from the ashes, because it's a fire sign. And I like Aries full moons for kind of reigniting and re-inspiring everything that you were excited for in the spring during Aries season. And we were all like, yeah, let's get into this year. Let's start moving. And now we're kind of heading into the colder months, slowing down. And like, what do you want to kindle? Like, what coals do you want to like keep going into next year?
That sounds like a good combination with the Pluto going.
Yeah.
Normal.
Yeah. It's like, what do you want to hold on to? And what do you want to burn away? Then October 21st through the 27th, the sun is moving into Scorpio. So the beginning of October is like balancing your scales. And then again, Scorpio is that water energy that can help us reflect and cleanse and clear, or help you kind of integrate everything. After the dust has settled, now you can like wash everything away. And because the sun is moving into Scorpio, let's see, the 22nd, that means that we're going to be in Scorpio season for Halloween. We've actually got our new moon in Scorpio, technically November 1st, but November 1st early morning. So it's like Halloween is going to have this very Scorpio spooky vibe, which is fun and exciting. And it's going to be, a new moon is dark. So it's going to be dark outside. You can see all the spookies coming out.
Extra spooky on Halloween. Yeah.
I mean, I think we like to see a full moon on Halloween, but a dark moon is even better for
extra spook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's the moon for October.
Yay. Awesome. Thank you, Alyson.
Thank you so much, Alyson. We're looking forward. Well, I mean, we got a long time, but we're going to have Alyson with us out there, the Priestess of Wonderland out there at Lake Shawnee. And we already got cool stuff being planned. So
yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah,
I'm scared, but I can't wait.
Well,
and then
we don't have to leave each other alone.
Yes, nobody will have to be by themselves. Plus, once this extra moon thing is over, we can talk about what did happen.
Right.
Yeah. Is it happening this month?
I think
it's already happened.
Yeah. It's where we are currently
in it now.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then, we can talk about it again.
I think it's the end of November is when it shoots off into space.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Oh, Keisha, thanks for holding my hand.
Thank you so much, Alyson.
Thank you. Bye.
Everybody.
All right. Michael Schratt, a private pilot, military aerospace historian, has lectured across the country on unique subject of mystery aircraft and classified propulsion systems buried deep within the military industrial complex. Michael has developed a number of contacts which have had firsthand experience dealing with classified black programs, including former U.S. Air Force pilots, retired Navy personnel, and aerospace engineers that have maintained a top secret, sensitive, compartmented information clearance in an effort to expose government fraud, waste, and abuse. Michael devotes much of his free time researching aerospace technical documents, conducting interviews, and traveling to multiple university archives. As a concerned citizen, it is his belief it is our constitutional obligation to question authority, and that most definitely is true, and demand an accounting of special access programs that bypass congressional oversight and public scrutiny. Please welcome to the show. Oh, we're going to try to bring him on here, add to stage. Michael Schratt. Welcome to the show,
Hi.
Michael.
Hi, good to be with you. Great to be with you.
It's good to have you. And, I've been able to catch some of your appearances on some other programs.
Sure.
And man, I almost don't know where to get started because it's just so much information. And this is the first time we've really talked about UFO crashes and retrievals and things like that on the witching hours. We've talked about a lot of we've talked about abductions and sightings and stuff like that. So I guess we should start at the beginning. How did you originally get into kind of researching this field?
It's great to be with both of you. I've had an interest in aerospace and aviation my whole life. My father used to take me to a place called Victory Air Museum in Wonderland, Illinois, when I was very young. And at this museum, they had these old World War II warbirds parked out into the open field. There was a lot of grass growing up through the wheel wells, and the paint was chipped and cracked, and the windows were oxidized, and all of the flight controls had this skeleton structure because all the fabric had rotted away, and it just had this ghostly appeal, like these old warbirds sitting out in the field. It just had this otherworldly appearance, And so that was the beginning of my interest in aviation. And then being close to Oshkosh, Wisconsin, gave me the ability to go to the biggest air show in the world for like 27 years in a row.
Wow.
Started, talking to different people. Eventually, the historical UFO cases came into play because QFOS was not too far away. It's only about an hour's drive. That's Center for UFO Studies, 2457 West Peterson Avenue near downtown Chicago. And they really had the largest private collection of UFO cases. This is where all of J. Allen Hynek's cases came into. People would write J. Allen Hynek from all over the world, and they'd send a drawing, they'd send a sketch, an illustration, a 3-page report. They'd have a flight path. All of it went to J. Allen Hynek. And so they had like 20 file cabinets full of 60,000 cases. So over about a 2-year period, I literally started going through every single case. And these file cabinets were so packed and so full with these manila folders, you could not put a razor blade between each case. So it was this almost a drudgery to go into every file cabinet, pull out every manila folder. Let's see if it had a drawing, a sketch, 3-page report. If it met that criteria, I did an AutoCAD SolidWorks drawing of it. And then from that point, I kind of commissioned professional artists to redo these things, bring them up to, modern standards to preserve our history. And that's kind of what my job is here. That eventually led into the Leonard Stringfield cases, the crash retrieval cases. The very second I saw his material, I knew it was bombshell information. I just knew it. I knew that guy had lightning in a bottle because he had, firsthand military witnesses that held the bodies, that held the debris, that put these things on 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy trucks, shipped them to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Those are the caliber of witnesses that Leonard dealt with. So, these are the cases that we want to go over this evening.
Sounds incredible. So at some point, all of that information was classified, correct?
Well, a lot of the people, the agreement that Leonard made with his witnesses is that he could preserve an important part of our national history by retelling their accounts, but their names had to be kept under wrap and anonymous. That's the agreement he has done. Now, a lot of these operations, yes, they are classified, but the witnesses have come forward on the basis that their name can't be released, and Leonard held that all the way till his last day. So he remained faithful to his witnesses.
So is that center with all those documentations, is that open to the public, or is it only for certain people?
Center for UFO Studies absolutely is open to the public.
Wow.
Now, they have since moved over to David Marler in New Mexico, near Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I should mention that the time I was there for a period of 2 years, no one ever bothered to show up. It was a completely underused resource.
Wow.
You think this is like the best place in the whole United States to get all this information?
Yeah.
Nobody showed up. It was
You're
crickets.
You're the only one sitting there.
Crickets, And now what's happening is David Marler has the National UFO Record Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's working with state and the local officials, and they now have a rather large school building, and he's getting collections from all around the world, and he's bringing in all these collections. They're in the process of moving everything there now, and this will absolutely be open to the public. They're going to have a launch, I think sometime in late November, and all of this will be available to the public.
Wow, that's amazing.
So getting into some of these cases, I guess the case that even if someone's not into UFOs, if that's not a source of interest for them, most people have heard about I guess what I consider to be the most notorious case, which is Roswell, New Mexico, 1947. That's the first time that that's the first one that I know of where it's like, it's rumored that the government was able to recover bodies, or I guess biologics is the term that's being thrown around now. So where are we on that? I know that someone is that of the first time that you heard about that, or is there something that preceded that, or do you think that there's other cases that came later where that was what was going on?
Well, I think the best way to answer that question is, should I share my screen now? Should we do that?
Yeah, feel free to.
Go for it.
Let's do that. Hopefully this works here. Let's try this. Share screen, window here, share. Okay. You seeing this on your end? Oh, you got it. Okay.
Perfecto.
Full screen, roger that. Okay, so I guess we should start here. So this presentation is called Retrievals of the Third Kind: Cosmic Crashes, Corpses, and Cover-Ups. Honestly, it's an homage to Leonard Stringfield. In a nutshell, it's really something that is devoted to Leonard Stringfield and all of his great research. And we'll kind of get into this here. UFO crash retrievals, the ultimate holy grail of UFO research. Now, the question is, why is it the ultimate holy grail? It's simple, because we as a group of researchers and ufologists all around the world, now there's not too many of us, MUFON membership, I think, might be 4,000 right now. Worldwide, there might be 5,000 people that are really interested in this subject, like to the level of MUFON members, people who devote their life to research. I mean, it's a small group. There might be 2,500 people in the US that are absolutely really involved in this, so it's a small group. Now, we've been in this game for 80 years. We have tried the democratic process for 80 years, and it has failed us. It has absolutely failed us. The recent UAP disclosure legislation has been axed, canceled for a second year in a row. So what that means is, by default, it has now come onto our shoulders. We have to have the responsibility now to track down these legacy witnesses to get to their employers, their bosses, that could perhaps get us to the debris and the bodies. Now, you were talking about Roswell a little bit earlier. As you may know, all of the 509th Bomb Group members from Roswell Army Airfield back in 1947, all of the firsthand military witnesses, they're all gone. There's not one single firsthand military witness left. They're all gone. So in the eyes of the government, it's cover-up complete. So that's what we're up against. I mean, we are long since past the Undertaker here. We're already racing the Undertaker, and they're trying to time everybody out. That's what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so we won't let them, because there's still a small group of people here that are interested in this subject. We want to know where our tax dollars are going. We know that they've been kicking the can down the road for 80 years. They're not going to, on their own, volunteer this information for a number of reasons, because you're talking about NDAs that were signed years ago. We're talking about thousands of lawsuits that would go on this. This technology and propulsion systems associated with these vehicles would absolutely decimate the industries, the utilities. So you got all the internal combustion engines would go out of business. You've got the coal fire plants would go out of business. You've got the solar farms. You've got the nuclear power plants. You've got the wind generator farm. All this multi-trillion-dollar utility industry would absolutely go bankrupt overnight if they let this technology out. So I'm taking
a lot of very rich people are going to go broke really quick,
That's
Michael.
right. That's exactly correct.
And
so
that's why it doesn't happen.
You can see why they have been delaying all this. And
yes,
I don't know if we will ever know the truth. I'd like to remain optimistic, but you can just see what they've done is they've canceled the legislation a second time. We're already in this 80 years. And if we don't take the bull by the horns and make a management decision, we're all going to be here another 50 years and we still won't know. That's why the crash retrieval cases are by far the most important, because they have everything in one: the bodies, debris, and craft. So let's continue on here. A couple quick announcements. The content of each case highlighted in this presentation has remained intact per the description of the original source. Number 2, the identity of first-hand sources will be protected per Leonard Stringfield's original agreement with his military contacts. Number 3, the visual aids used in this presentation are computer-generated forensic composite illustrations and sketches, which originated from the specific details provided by Leonard's sources. So I want to give you a cross-section of where Leonard got this information. These are his military witnesses here. 3-star U.S. Air Force generals, U.S. Air Force fighter pilots, astronauts, commercial pilots, air traffic controllers, neurosurgeons, pathologists, theoretical physicists, and mathematicians, U.S. Army officers, U.S. Navy officers, military police, high-level Pentagon officials, top military brass, scientists and engineers who worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and other government facilities. So you can see these are the people that he dealt with. We're talking about military witnesses here, credible witnesses. A couple of quotes.
Not a list to be sneezed at, that's for sure.
No, not at all. Not at all. Couple quotes. Number 1, UFO crash retrievals can't be real, because if they were, I would have read about it in the local newspaper. That's number 1. Number 2, there are not now, nor ever have been, any extraterrestrial visitors or equipment on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, this is their official press release, July 1980. So what we're going to do here in this presentation is we're going to take Leonard's firsthand military witnesses, and we're going to go up against the United States government and the Air Force, and we're going to kind of see who comes out on top here. I want to introduce everybody to the man of the hour here. This is Leonard Stringfield, the gentleman who coined the term UFO crash retrievals. And over about a 30-year period, he collected dozens and dozens of these firsthand military witnesses who guarded the bodies at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, loaded the craft up. We're talking about people who dealt with the pathologist report, x-ray technicians, medical doctors who handled the bodies and the autopsies. That's who Leonard was dealing with here. A couple of quick bio points on Leonard. Born in 1920, he grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. By the time he graduated from high school in 1939, he already memorized the entire dictionary. So they used to call him Webster. That was his nickname. He joined the military as soon as he heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. After the war, he was employed by a chemical company in Ohio and retired after 30 years. He wrote 2 books, Inside Saucer Post 3-0 back in 1957, Situation Red, The UFO Siege, 1977. Next one is the one that we want to drill down on here. His lecture on UFO crash retrievals at the 1978 MUFON Symposium in Dayton, Ohio, caused an international sensation. It absolutely did. Now, I should also mention that in this paper that he delivered, there were a minimum of 12 military witnesses that he highlighted in his paper here to the audience. After this was done, there was pushback from the audience because he refused to release their names. And so there was no way to independently verify what Leonard was talking about. So he absolutely did receive some pushback here. Leonard died December 18th, 1994. All right, so we have Cincinnati Enquirer.
I just want to mention real quick here. It seemed like 1957. That first book is pretty early. Like that had to be one of in the first wave of any kind of UFO publishing that had to be done at the time. What wasn't it? Or am I wrong about that?
Well, if you think about the flaps, you've got the 47 flap and you've got the 52 flap. The 52 flap was even larger than the 1947 UFO flap. So this was absolutely getting on the radar screen. We had pilots chasing these things. We had orders from the Air Force to go after these things and shoot these things down. So it was big time in 52. Yeah. So that tracks with Leonard's book here. Okay. Cincinnati Enquirer, July 19th, 1993. It says, author continues quest for truth about UFOs. Quote, what I've collected has staggering implications for mankind. This would be the biggest thing since Christ, really. Technically, yes, it would. That's a bold statement, but it would be a very large thing here. All right. Now, also want to mention that Leonard maintained a collection of 22 bank boxes of original correspondence letters, drawings, audio tapes, and testimony from his sources. These witnesses should be located and their testimony should be presented before Congress. Yeah, so it's already way beyond this now. We're years in back of everything here. We need to find these remaining witnesses like yesterday. This needs to happen ASAP. All right, everything that we're going to be talking about today, this evening, comes from this book, UFO Crash Retrievals, The Complete Investigation Status Reports 1 through 7 by Leonard Stringfield, 1978 and 1994. Now, when you look through this book, and I've got the copy here, it's thick. It's not for the faint of heart. You really need to be a geek like me to really be interested in this stuff. I mean, it's like the bodies and the craft and where everything was sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. We've got reports from Tampa, MacDill Air Force Base, Homestead Air Force Base, Langley Air Force Base, where all these assets are being sent. It gives you the intricate details of the crash retrievals, pages and pages of reports from the firsthand military witnesses. So if you have an interest in this, I highly recommend this book. It's not cheap. It's like $79 on Amazon, but it gives you all of Leonard's research into one volume. Now, however, I should mention that as you start paging through this book, you're going to find out that it's text intensive. It's all reading. There's no drawings. There's no illustrations. There's no visual aids. There's practically nothing there. What you end up having to do is kind of make all this stuff up in your memory, in your imagination, in your mind's eye. You have to formulate what these crash retrievals might look like based on the eyewitness testimony. Now, that is not necessarily a bad thing because we all interpret things differently. But me personally, what I wanted to do is I wanted to look through this book with a fine-tooth comb from the very first page to the very last page and literally drill down on each case, pull out the most mission-critical cases, commit them to a professionally done, finalized rendering in pencil, use that as a sketch and guide to do a full-color rendering. And this has been my crusade the last 4 years, and this is what I want to present to your audience tonight here. Also want to give credit to Ryan Wood, good friend of mine. He wrote a book called Magic Eyes Only, Earth's Encounters with Extraterrestrial Technology. This is the second edition. The first edition with the same name was printed a little over 20 years ago. This is an updated version. Now, if we take Leonard's book about the status reports that I just showed you, which has 119 crash retrieval cases, now we bring in Ryan's book, Magic Eyes Only. He has an additional 104 cases of crash retrievals. You see the odds are in our favor here. And we'll continue on. Now I want to take before we dive into the cases, I want to take everyone to Las Vegas. Okay, so we've got 119 crash retrieval cases. If we go to Vegas and we go to a roulette wheel that has 120 spaces, and we bet 119 chips, we're going to win every time. We can't lose because it's 119 one in our favor. The numbers are in favor. We can't lose. We essentially can't lose. All we need is one of these cases to be authentic, and this whole concept of UFO crash retrieval non-existence completely falls apart. So when we hear about senators and congressmen, they don't have any evidence. Well, we got 119 crash retrievals that they could drill down on. Right. I want to give credit to Rudy Gardea, who's my artist, who did all the original pencil sketches for this presentation. All right. Why don't we jump in here? So this is UFO crash retrieval. This is 1942. And I'm going to give you the page number, the date, the location, the details here. This is at an Army base north of Georgia that even Leonard didn't know about. This is page 319 in the book. Now, when this thing came down, it hit the side of the Army facility. This is north of Georgia. It ripped open a hull breach on the side of the craft, which you can see on Rudy's drawing here. This thing was about 15 feet in diameter, 10 feet high. It had 3 levels. Upper level had what looked like a display panel with buttons and switches. That was level number 1. Level number 2 is this mid deck that had a wraparound window. In back of that wraparound window, you can look on Rudy's detailed drawing here. There were 4 what looked like bar stools. And on the bottom of this thing, there was an entryway hatch. Now, there were 4 crew members taken alive. This is 42, long before Roswell. They were 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, large black eyes, milky white skin. Now, also mentioned within the report, it talks about how there were hieroglyphic type lettering or markings written along the bottom circumference of the craft itself. I'm going to go to a little bit of a blow up here, and you can see this is my full color rendering. This kind of gives you an idea of what these hieroglyphic writings might look like. Let's see here. Here's the blow up. And I'm just thinking, there's got to be a united coalition of linguistic experts, people who are engineering background experts, trying to decipher and interpret what these symbols might mean. There has to be an international coalition of maybe even doctors looking at all this, but they have to interpret what this might mean. So there's got to be a thick binder of all these symbols because they've been seen on the inside wall of the upper domes of these craft as well. Next one, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. Source is page 242, 243 in Leonard's book. Now, there's 2 witnesses to this. So not only do we have the 6-year-old son, but we also have his father, who was an avionics mechanic who worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, this is in 1946. Back then, it was known as Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. It did not become Wright-Patterson Air Force Base until September 1947. So it's Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. Now, what you're looking at here is a photograph of Hangar Bay Complex 4. The last one on the right is Bay E, and I believe it took place inside this bay right here. Now, the 6-year-old boy, he joined his father because he was getting really good grades. There's a connecting cafeteria to that main hangar. And this janitor was actually buying a soda pop for this 6-year-old boy. And he's handing it to the 6-year-old boy. And the second that he handed it to this boy, one of the military personnel within the hangar just so happened to coincidentally walk through the connecting doorway. And this boy is looking inside here. And here he is with the pop, and this is Rudy's very rough sketch. We're getting it all laid out. He's looking in this hangar, and what does he see? And here's our rough pass. He sees about an 18-foot diameter dish-shaped craft on the hangar floor sitting on tripod landing gear legs. And he's like shocked at what he's seeing here. There were 2 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboy trucks with unknown tarp debris. There were military personnel inside. 2 Jeeps were there. There was what looked like 3 ET bodies laying on the hangar floor, covered up in blankets halfway. And so this is his rough sketch here. Now let's reverse the angle so that you can get a look inside the hangar. And we've done that here. This is our rough sketch drawing. You can see the little boy looking in the back of the hangar through the doorway. And he's shocked at what he's seeing here. And this is the layout drawing that just kind of puts all the monuments in place. let's go to the refined drawing by Rudy, and this is what we came up with to make this thing come alive. Now, this off-white craft had tripod landing gear legs. It had 2 rings wrapped around the outer circumference, and he's looking in the back here. 2 tractor trailers with unknown tarp debris with chains over the top of the tarps. That was seen. And then there were at least 3 ET bodies laying on stretchers on the hangar floor. So what we wanted to do is take everything we got from the father and the son 3-page report within Leonard's book that you can read all about. We'll use that information to hook it up with Rudy's drawing. We'll go to the full color rendering. And this is what we came up with just to kind of make this case come alive and preserve an important part of our national history. 1946, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. All right, let's go to the next one here. Same place, 1946. The source was a private. He worked in records management. And this is from Space, the Final Frontier, page 59. So I'm going to divert just one time only from Leonard's publication because I think it's important. So this is page 59 in Clark McClellan's book. This is the cover of his book, Space, the Final Frontier. Now, in the book, it has this sketch from the primary eyewitness. This thing was about 15 feet in diameter, 7 feet tall, highly polished mirror aluminum chrome exterior. No visible means of propulsion. There was no seams. There were no welds. There were no socket head cap screws, no hex head cap screws, no fastener of any kind on the exterior of this craft. There was a series of rectangular windows wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft. Now, if you look very closely here, kind of at the bottom sketched and scribbled here, it said retrieved from Arkansas on a railroad flat car. So they got this thing from Arkansas, loaded it up on a railroad flat car and shipped it all the way to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. All right, let's continue on here. Here's my AutoCAD drawing that shows you what this thing looks like here. Now, if you look at the upper right, I've peeled back the skin, showing you kind of this interior central column that was about 3 feet in diameter. It began from the bottom of the craft, went through the midpoint, and then terminated at the top of the craft. Now, off to the left, one window from left of center, you'll see that there's a red dot there. That is the attempted point of entry that they were using with diamond tip drill bits. They were desperately trying to breach the hull of this craft, and they could not get in. I've got 3 other cases within the Springfield collection where they're using diamond tip drill bits, they're using acetylene torches, they're using lasers to get inside, and they can't get inside. This has been going on for years now. All right, let's continue on here. This was my very first past kindergarten color illustration to kind of show you what this thing may actually look like here. Here's Joseph Race full color rendering, and he's peeled back the skin to show you this central column here. And then he's got the red dot on the window left of center where they were trying to use this diamond tip drill bit. So let's go to Rudy's drawing. So when this private and records management got inside the hangar, because he had to deliver this letter to one of these military brass, his friend who was the police guard there, he said, I got something I want to show you. So he brought him into the hangar, and this craft was laying on the hangar floor. There were white lab coat technicians that were changing shifts. So he was at the right place at the right time. Off to the right of the craft on the hangar floor was a tarp that was partially folded up. In the foreground, there was an open toolbox with a electric drill and a diamond tip drill bit. So they were just literally changing shift here. So we want to take this as a guide, hook it up with the 2-page report and sketch from the primary eyewitness, and go to the full color rendering. And this is what we came up with, just to kind of, preserve our history and do the best we can to make this case come alive as though we were actually there back in 1946.
I got a question for you. Do we know if the column was hollow or solid?
Don't know
Because we couldn't get in it, right?
No, they could see inside, but to my knowledge, they never got inside. So I don't know what that central column might be. It might be associated with the propulsion system. We've heard of liquid mercury vortex engines that date back to the time of the ancient India Sanskrit text, the Vimanas, have the exact same liquid mercury vortex engines. So maybe this technology dates back a lot earlier than we all think it does. That could be a possibility. So yeah, to my knowledge, they never got inside. It never made that mention in the report.
It makes me think of the torus, that shape that's kind of like a donut. So it's like, it makes me think of like the energy going through that center column and coming around. Yeah.
Yes. That's right.
What were you going to say, Frosty?
Well, CMC had a question, and this was going back to the one that was recovered in North Georgia. Supposedly the craft was 15 feet high. It's in the description, and the ETs were evidently 5 feet tall. Were the floors like equal sizes, or was there?
I know exactly what you're talking about. The math doesn't work, right? There's no way they could stand up.
Yeah.
It's possible that there was a circular cutout in the center. I don't know. I can't give you the specific details, but yes, that's what it mentioned. Those are the correct dimensions. That is the correct height of the ETs that were recovered. So how they actually walked around in there, maybe they were just sitting in the bar stools, who knows? But those are the dimensions that were given in the report.
Okay, excellent. Then thank you for the questions, CMC.
Okay, so this one. Who would have a need to know, like in 46 and 47? So I want to bring everyone's attention to this very famous document. We've all heard this before. This is a letter from Nathan Twining, Wright Field Air Force Base Commander, later Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, to Air Force Brigadier General George Shulgin, September 23rd, 1947. And here he says, the phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. So coming from the caliber of this gentleman, it puts it on a whole different caliber here. This is like a very credible source. Later in this document, he talks about the form, the fit, the function, the flight path of these vehicles. Very good document. Never contested. It's authentic. It's real. So if it's good enough for General Nathan Twining, it's something that we should consider here carefully. All right, next one. Papagos Indian Reservation, west of Globe, Arizona, 1947, north of Superstition Mountains. The primary witness was in the Navy during World War II, page 93, case A10 in Leonard's book. So we'll go to the drawing here. See, you've got two personnel. They're in a Jeep. They're going down an unimproved road not too far from the Superstition Mountains. And all of a sudden, they're stopped and challenged by military police, told not to be here. Get out of here immediately, evacuate the area. You're not supposed to be here. This is a classified operation, but it's too late. They already saw what was going on here. They were at the right place at the right time at the very beginning end of this retrieval operation. Now, about another 75 feet down the road on the left-hand side, they see this 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that augured in at a 40-degree angle. It had a low-rise dome on top. There was a series of indented windows wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself. There were two rings wrapped around the outer circumference, and there was a 6x6 troop transport for all the military personnel that were guarding this whole scene. So they see this. It's reported in Leonard's publication. This is just another one of these retrievals. This is still before Roswell here. Now we want to take this drawing as a guide. We'll go to the full color rendering. And this is what we came up with just to kind of give everyone an idea of what this may have looked like. Now, as we continue to go through these cases, what you're just going to obviously see here is that the body count goes up, the craft count goes up, and at one point, all roads lead to Rome. But in the case of this investigation, all roads lead to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Why Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, right? It's simple because they have the Foreign Technology Division there where they can test the tensile strength of the material. That's one. And number two, they have the aeromedical lab there. So two very good reasons why Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is a great location of where they want to bring this. However, it became apparent to them early on that they needed to diversify their portfolio. They cannot have all their assets in one location. So they started farming out a lot of these assets. It makes sense, right? You can't have everything in one spot because if you have a fire and you have a tornado, an earthquake, you could lose some of these things. So they started shipping these things to other locations, like MacDill Air Force Base, Edwards Air Force Base, the underground cold storage vaults at Eglin Air Force Base, Langley Air Force Base, CIA headquarters, all around the country is what they've done. And it's very clear that's absolutely what's going on here. Now, I kind of have a side project here. So I like to track the bodies and the craft. But what happened to the debris? What happened to the debris? So this case was Arizona, 1947. There's one page of information from Leonard Stringfield's internal office memo reports that I was able to access back in 2013. One page talks about something called Foot Brothers Gear and Machine Company in Chicago. So I'm just going to go over this here. According to Mr. Robert Helmold, Foot Brothers Gear and Machine Company of Chicago conducted metallurgical analysis on pieces from a saucer that crashed in Arizona back in 1947. So they retrieved some debris, and some of this debris may have looked like a gear. It might have had some gear teeth on it, and some of it might have been broken or something, and there might have been like kind of an arc radius of a gear. And so they thought, well, who are we going to bring it to? We got to bring it to experts who make gears. So I started digging, and I started thinking, all right, let's look at the background of this company here. Chicago Tribune, January 15th, 1955. It says it makes gears as large as 21 feet in diameter and weighing 45,000 pounds and others small enough to put on a watch chain. Its gears are found on airplanes of all types, including jets and helicopters. In a year, it will make thousands of different gears for use by industry. So it's checking out. If you had something that was recovered and the government didn't know exactly where it was, you'd want to send it to this company. They're experts at this stuff. Here we have Hendricks Commercial Register, 1909. You can see the size of the gears that these guys make here. We'll do one more. Purchasing Agent, May 1923. So it absolutely checks out that this, back in 46, 47 timeframe, this absolutely would be your best bet for someone who could take a look at gears, reverse engineer it, and give a good assessment and analysis of what these things are actually made of and what it actually does.
So is this quite possibly kind of like that? Because I don't know the dates of when a lot of these corporations were started, but kind of like essentially an early version of General Dynamics, or one of the government. Essentially, that's the role that company was filling at the time.
In a way, I don't think that they were a defense contractor, but they were just a company, a machine company that makes gears. They weren't necessarily a defense contractor, but that's heading in that direction. Absolutely,
heading in that direction. Okay.
Yeah, it's absolutely heading in that direction. White Sands Missile Range, July 4th, 1947. Our source is a technical sergeant, U.S. Army Air Force, and this is page 196 in Leonard's book. Now, you can see here the perimeter of White Sands Missile Range is in yellow. This actually took place on the north part of White Sands Missile Range, and this is what actually came down. This thing was large, about 150 feet in diameter. Also want to mention that it had a low-rise dome on top. The entire scene was excruciatingly well lit. They had brought in light-alls, which you see here with the 4 clusters shining down. They had searchlights. They had spotlights shining on this thing. This is all well lit up. They had military personnel and photographers with still cameras taking photographs of everything. They had people with motion picture film cameras going on. So they got footage of all this. They had people with Geiger counters walking around this thing, checking to see if it was hot for radiation. Bottom line is, this whole thing was very well documented. So let's go to the next slide here.
The next slide is going to show us the photos you found in the video.
Yeah, that's right. This is our full color rendering of what this may have looked like back in 1947. So again, this is very well documented. And what all this means here, this is the actionable item. Since still photography and motion picture film was recorded of this event, senators and congressmen with the appropriate security clearances should track down and utilize this evidence for future public hearings. Now, here is where the brick wall comes in, okay? Because they always talk about in these congressional hearings that, well, we don't have any evidence. We don't have any physical evidence. Well, We just showed that there absolutely is evidence. They've got documents, they've got paperwork, they've got motion picture film reel footage, they've got still camera 8x10 black and white glossy white photographs. All of that can be run to ground. But the problem we're running into is, number one, these senators and congressmen in these congressional hearings, they don't have a high enough security clearance to get access to material. And number two is they've never been read into these programs. So how can they access information if they've never been even read into these programs? That's what we're running up against. That's the problem we're running up against. Yep.
I know that's been a major point of the congressional, meetings that they've had. My question about this is, so if we know that they were taking pictures and they know they were taking video, what's the likelihood that those still exist at this point? Like, especially now with the information that's come out, I almost feel like those things would be, and if they did exist, they'd be in danger right now.
Personally, I believe they salvaged all of it. They didn't throw it away. No, it's locked up in multiple warehouses around the country. And these are big warehouses. I'm talking about probably a half dozen to a dozen of those Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark final scene type warehouses. Probably something like that, because they've been doing this. They've been recording these things from World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, Desert Storm, every major conflict that the United States has been involved in, they have recorded these things on gun cameras and everything. So yes, I believe they have all of this.
Okay. And I guess another thing I want to bring up, kind of while we're on this subject, is when we talk about the people who were knowledgeable of these things inside of the government, and we know that to some level there's compartmentalization that happens.
Correct.
Like how do we what do we figure at this point of people who are active in government that actually even know that these things exist? Like, for instance, like we were talking about many in the Congress don't have the clearance that's high enough for them to find out the information. What about presidents? And so it almost gets to the point to like how many people inside government would even be able to locate and provide these documents?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, a couple things to mention. They will stop at nothing to keep this under wraps. We kind of talked about it at the beginning. Now, we could make an argument that James Forstall, the first Secretary of Defense, was the first casualty of the cover-up. We might not be able to prove that conclusively, but he may be the first casualty of the cover-up. The other thing I will mention is that during World War II, this entire umbrella concept of UFO, extraterrestrial reality, extraterrestrial intelligence, this whole subject was classified higher than the atomic bomb during World War II. It was classified above top secret. That's where Timothy Good got the name of his book, Above Top Secret, because that was actually how classified this was. We're talking about way up top. They will stop at nothing to keep this under wraps. And it's very clear at this point that a significant majority of this subject matter has been put out of the government and put it into the privatized defense contractor hands. So this is no longer a classified subject, but in point of fact, a proprietary subject. And that's what we're up against now.
Which makes a ton of sense. So it's being protected by essentially corporate interests because because that's what has the most power in our country now. Yep. So yeah, next thing you know, you have patents on things, and then you don't have to release what you have. How diabolical!
Absolutely. All right, next one: UFO crash retrieval, 1947, seen at a warehouse at Berkeley University. We have the name on this one. We can release the name. His name is Albert Bruce Collins, deceased. He was a metallurgical engineer. UFO crash retrievals, page 197 in Leonard's book. Now, this guy was at the right place at the right time in this warehouse when all of a sudden this 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy truck backs into the warehouse. I'm going to go to Rudy's drawing here, and here's our witness standing off to the left. And what he sees is this 30-foot long egg-shaped craft. it looks like it's got a crack on the side of it. It literally looks like a cracked egg. Now, in the center, there was a 36-inch diameter central core, or egg yolk, it was called. On the forward section of this craft, there was a composite panel. Wrapped around the outer circumference of this 36-inch diameter sphere or central core, there was another composite panel. Off to the lower right, there was what looked like an internal implosion, and it had the shrapnel and debris coming out the right bottom of the craft. And so he's looking at all this and taking it all in. He really can't believe what he is seeing, but he was this metallurgical engineer. And this is about a 2-page report within Leonard's publication here. So we want to use this as a guide, and we followed closely to what this engineer had talked about. And this is our full color rendering from Joel Payne. I want to give him credit. This is our full color rendering of what this perhaps looked like at Berkeley Warehouse back in 1947. Wow. And we can continue on here. Carrot Patch south of Salinas, California. This is July, August 1947. 2 primary eyewitnesses were 19-year-old workers in a nearby field. This is from the dictation notes of Leonard Stringfield, personal assistant. Now, the craft came down the night prior to. The next morning, when the 2 boys showed up for work, the foreman alerted the 2 boys and said, you know what, I got something I want to show you. You need to see this. So they walked over, and what they saw, here's the original sketch from the report. A small dish-shaped craft, about 9 feet in diameter. It had a flat top, 4 feet tall. A double row of indented windows wrapped around the outer circumference, which is very similar to what that thing looked like at in Arizona, not too far from Superstition Mountains. The same concepts here. They're looking at all this. One of these kids got up enough guts to walk up this thing, and he kicked the side of it with his boot. He made physical contact with this. Now, in this case, it came with a 3-page report. It also came with a map. So X marks the spot on this one. If we were there back when this all went down, I could probably take you plus or minus 200 feet where this thing came down. There might be some debris left, who knows, but it's been so long now, it'd be very difficult to find where this thing came down. But back then, we could get pretty close. Maybe there was some metal left over, who knows, it would be worth a shot. So let's continue on here. Now, here's my first pass AutoCAD drawing, just to kind of lay these things out. This is only 9 feet in diameter, 4 feet tall. It was not a large craft whatsoever. My first pass childish type full color rendering, just to kind of lay these things out. I'm going to go to Rudy's drawing. So after that one 19-year-old worker kicked the side of this thing, literally 5 minutes later, the military shows up. They got 2 Jeeps. They got a 6x6 troop transport covered, towing a trailer. And these military personnel guards tell these 2 kids to get out of here immediately. You're not supposed to be here. They watched the whole operation. They watched these police basically manhandle this craft onto the tractor trailer. They put a tarp over it, put chains on it, and ship this thing out of here. This is a rapid operation. So if we take the 3-page report, the original sketch, Rudy's drawing, use this as a guide, we'll go to the full color rendering, and this is what we came up with, kind of make this case come alive and to preserve our history. That's the goal in all these things, is to take these original eyewitness accounts, go to some kind of drawing based on their testimony, and come up with something that we can actually pin down, add some reality to this. That's the whole goal of this. Now,
well, I'll say real quick, Michael, just because there is some things that, that there's the details that I noticed that really draw me in, because, the UFO, the crash, all that stuff, but the fact that they saw a deuce and a half, like the truck that they're using. I mean, as someone who's been in the military a little bit, it's like, yeah, that's the vehicle they're going to use. So like having that knowledge and kind of the details is really what kind of grabs me about some of these stories, for sure.
Yeah, we try to maintain period correct historical accuracy on all these to the best we possibly can. So I want to introduce everyone to Danny Sheehan. People who are involved in this field already know who he is. He obtained degrees from Harvard University and Harvard Law School. He's a large advocate for UFO disclosure and transparency. I'll go to the next slide here. Back in 1977, he was given a one-time only special security clearance to investigate some files at the Library of Congress. So let's go to the next one here, and I want to talk about what he actually accessed. These were the classified files specifically associated with Project Blue Book.
Okay.
These files are not to be confused with the unclassified Project Blue Book records, which have long since been declassified and sent to the National Archives in Washington, D.C. The photos were accessed by Danny Sheehan at the Madison Building basement during January of 1977 under the direction of the Congressional Science and Technology Committee and Marcia Smith at the Congressional Research Service. So that's how he got access to the material. So where are the classified Project Blue Book files now? We already know where the unclassified Blue Book files are. What we're interested in are the files that Danny accessed, which are the classified files. So here is where he accessed the files. This is the James Madison Memorial Building. I'm going to go to the top view looking down map here. So if you look at the center, you've got the United States Capitol. If we go off to the right, we've got the Library of Congress. Just south of that is the Madison Memorial Building. That's where all this went down. This is where he got access to the files. Now, he said that he went on an elevator and he went down, opened up, elevator doors open up. He goes down to the basement. He's walking through a corridor. So here's the layout of the basement. He walks down this hallway. He's met by two security personnel guards. They check his ID. They were expecting him to be there. Turns out, yes, it's Danny. So he walks into kind of a medium-sized room. Inside the room, they have a little bit of a mobile dolly on wheels that has some racks on it. There's some paperwork. There's some files there. And then there's these cardboard boxes that are secured by this little nylon string that you might have seen in some of these libraries have archives. It's secured by the string. This is what Danny had talked about. So he thought, this might be the only chance I get to be here. I don't have a lot of time to go through all this paperwork. So why don't I start loading in some of these microfilm reels and I'll see what I can find. So he strings one of these microfilm reels through the reader. I'm going to go to the next slide here. And this is a period correct 1977 microfilm reader. And so he's looking at all this. He turns this thing on and he's going through the reel here. And all of a sudden, he sees three photographs. And what they depict is a UFO crash retrieval operation in the midst of it actually going on. It was a winter scene. There were 4 people there. They were all men. They were wearing winter parkas. They had their hoods up. There was a furry flange around the top perimeter of each of the hoods that you see on these winter parka jackets. 3 of them had still cameras. They were taking photographs. One gentleman was off to the left. He was in a winter parka. He was recording the entire scene with a dual reel motion picture film camera. Now, what were they looking at? Well, they were looking at about a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft with a low-rise dome on top, propped up at a 30-degree angle. It kind of augured in, and when it came to rest, it built up a mound of dirt on the right-hand side. In a nutshell, that's the scene. Now, on the upper part of the dome, at the very perimeter of where the dome meets the beginning of the rim of the craft, so it's actually on the lower portion of the upper dome, he said that there was hieroglyphic type writing. Danny didn't have a lot of time, so he thought, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my notepad, because he brought a legal pad with him. This is what you see in the upper right. And I'm going to lay this legal pad down on this microfilm reader. I'm going to page through all the blank pages to the very back where you have that cardboard backing. And I'm going to project the image of these hieroglyphic type symbols onto the back cardboard backing of my notepad. And I'm going to trace this thing 1-to-1 at full scale. And that's exactly what you did. So what you see here on the bottom right is the napkin drawing that Danny did for me based on what his original trace looked like back in 1977. So wow. He's basically done with his meeting. He packs up his things. He starts walking out. He's met by the guards. They check his ID and he starts walking out. Now, one of these guards says, hey, wait a minute. You're not supposed to leave. What's that? And he said, that's my notepad. And the guard says, hey, come back here. I want to see that. So he hands it over to the guard. This guard starts paging through all these blank pages. He fails to get to the last page, which has the drawings of the symbols on there.
Mm-hmm.
So since he failed to do it, he hands it back to Danny. Danny walks out the facility. He got actual sketches from this crash retrieval. It's incredible. It's a fantastic account.
So was pretty smart.
Let's kind of go over what this thing looked like here. Here is the original napkin sketch. Now, about 3 months ago, I sat down with Danny. My friend Rudy was right with me, next to me, and we were going through this entire case. So what you see here on the bottom is the napkin sketch by Danny. And then, of course, Rudy started drawing this in real time because we wanted to get this thing historically accurate. These are the details here. We'll rip through this kind of quick. Craft measured 30 feet in diameter and was tipped up at a 30-degree angle. The craft had a dome on top with what appeared to be strange symbols along its lower surface. It left a trail on the ground and created a mound of dirt where it came to rest. The photo depicted 4 men wearing winter parkas with a furry fringe around their hoods. 3 men had still cameras, and a 4th man had a vintage shoulder-mounted dual-reel motion picture film camera. Using the motion picture camera as a guide, it appears that the photo was taken sometime between 1948 and 1961. There was no date or location mentioned in the photographs, so I had to do the best I could to date this photograph, and I narrowed it down sometime between 48 and 61. That's the best I could come up with. These are the winter parkas that the military personnel were wearing. They all had this furry flange that we've seen before. This is a period correct still camera. They might have been using this to take the photographs. And then what you're looking at here is a period correct dual reel motion picture film camera, but without the tripod. This thing was a shoulder mounted. So just delete the tripod and you've got this period correct motion picture film camera. All right, now we want to look at this symbology here. These are what these symbols look like. If I go to the next slide here, a friend of mine did kind of an enhancement. He refined it. So these were wrapped around the bottom section of that upper dome here. Okay, so now I want to take you through the refining process of how we ended up with a final drawing here. So these are the very early sketches. Again, Danny was with it through the entire process. So this took about almost 4 weeks of back and forth to nail all this down. First pass is very rough. We got the craft in place. We've got the men roughed out here. We've got the berm of debris on the right-hand side. Go to the next slide. We kind of do a little bit of refinement. This is a side view looking at about a 10-degree look-down angle on the craft itself. We've got some of the symbols in place. We'll go to the next slide. This is almost a direct side view. We've got the cameramen in place. We've got the still photography men in place. We've got the tip-up angle, just trying to lay this thing out here. Now, when we get to this one, I sent this to Danny, and he said, well, you know, you've got the people in the place correct, but the problem is the orientation is incorrect. And this started to get really frustrating to nail this thing down because, you know, we're talking about something that happened in 77. He didn't have a photograph of it. He's doing it by memory, and he's trying to convey all this to me and Rudy. So there was definitely some breakdowns in getting concepts conveyed. It kind of dawned on me that what he was saying is that this entire scene needs to be rotated at least 90 degrees. So once we hit that, we started rotating the scene 90 degrees. And now this is a kind of a direct side view. We need to keep on rotating. And then we finally came up with this drawing. So this was sent to Danny, and he said, yep, that's the correct location. Tip up angle is a little bit too high. You've got the men in place. So this was the guide that we used to do the final rendering. And that's what I want to show you next here. This is our final rendering. And when we showed this to Danny, he said, this is about as close as you're going to get until you actually see the authentic photograph. So this is, to the best of my knowledge, the best that we can possibly do. We've got the tip up angle. You can see the snow. You've got the berm built up. We've got a little bit of a debris trail here. We've got all the men in place with the cameras and the motion picture film camera. We've got the hieroglyphic writing on the dome section on top. So this checks the boxes here. However, I didn't want to stop here. I wanted to see if I could push the envelope. I wanted to see if I could get a photorealistic color rendering of what this scene might look like. So I put out a contest. $100 cash prize for the first person who comes up with a photorealistic rendering of what this scene looks like based on Rudy's drawing. I had people all around the United States help me. I had people from all around the world enter my contest, and I want to show you like top 5 results here. I'm not going to go over all these criteria, but it's the same thing that we talked about before. It had to be a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It had to have all the people in place. So
all the stuff. All right.
Yep, all the stuff. It had to check all the boxes. Now, there is a theoretical limit to what results you can achieve by typing prompts into an AI image generator. So bottom line is, you can sit here all day long on your computer and you can type in prompts to an AI generator and you can hit return and it will still not spit out exactly what you're looking for. We are not there yet in technology that the public knows about. We might be a year or 3 years out, but it's just not there yet. And I've tried this myself, and what you get is not exactly what you want. Bottom line is you still need the human touch. So you still are required with your own brain to put in what actually is going on here. So what you're left with is a hybrid illustration is the only way you're going to get to where you need to be in an illustration. You use AI to generate the background. That works okay. You use something called Unreal, something called 3D Studio Max to actually model up the craft itself to scale 1-to-1. And then you finish up with Photoshop that will give you your elements and equipment and personnel. So in point of fact, what we're left with is a hybrid illustration. That's the only way we're going to get to where we need to go. Now, here is Sean Lenahan. This is his entry to the contest. It's a noble attempt. Guy did a good job. He's got the snow scene here. He added in the lettering and the hieroglyphic type markings. We've got the people with the parkas. Well done, well done. Let me go to the next one. Ben Lewis, another good attempt. Kind of got that photorealistic look here. We've got the parkas. We've got people with the cameras. Guy did a good job. This is Skylar Stallings. I felt he was about as close as we can get, so he won the cash prize. So the guy did a good job. Pretty photorealistic scene. It looks pretty authentic. The snow looks good, follows the drawing, tip-up angle's good. He's got the writing. That's good. Now, I did have a late entry. I'm going to go to his. This is Dan. A little bit even more photorealistic. Yeah, so nice. When you come all together, this is our absolute best effort. I think we're at the bleeding edge here. This is about as good as we're going to get. So something like this.
Speaking of the AI, CMC had a question. Can or have the hieroglyphics been interpreted by AI processing?
That's a very good question. I never even asked it. That's a very good question. We should do that. We'll get some results.
Yeah.
That needs to be done. That needs to be done. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. It's where new technology has come out, and you think about the new ways to use it. But yeah, there's a lot of things we can go back and do with it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you wonder if the architects of the cover-up could foresee people using AI to crack the UFO cover-up. I wonder about that. I wonder
because you could do those symbols from one of those first stories too.
Yep.
Symbols and the hieroglyphics. Yep.
And they're using it for ancient languages. And if they're using it for ancient languages, then lost languages, then why not extraterrestrial languages or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at here is literally our best effort as of now, 2024, of what this looks like. So let's go on to the next one here. Okay, $64 million question. Where are the top secret files on UFO crash retrievals being stored? There was a one-page report in the Stringfield dictation notes that highlight this. They are kept in 3 large computer banks spread throughout the country. Number 1, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio. That shouldn't surprise us. Number 2, CIA headquarters, McLean, Virginia. Number 3, NSA headquarters, Fort Meade, Maryland. He also mentioned at the end of the report, quote, they will bend in any direction to keep them secret. So they are going to keep this close hold. They're not going to let this information up easily. They will fight tooth and nail before they will ever give up the information on crash retrievals. A lot of these historical cases, these are where we can find this information. All right, now, it also mentioned the location of where ET craft are being stored. Primary sections here: CIA headquarters, McLean, Virginia; MacDill Air Force Base, Tampa, Florida; Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, Goldsboro, North Carolina. So people with the appropriate security clearances, senators and congressmen, House and Armed Services Committee, if they could actually get teeth and had power and authority to get to these facilities, maybe they could get some of this information and this could come out in congressional hearings. This needs to happen. But we've been stonewalled by this UFO cosmic Watergate that no one gets access to this. And so somehow we have to find a way to pierce through this armament of this cover up here. All right, next one.
We talked about one of the reasons why this will never be shared has to do with money. What are some of the other reasons why you think that they don't want this information out?
Sure. Richard Dolan wrote a whole book about the implications called After Disclosure, AD After Disclosure. Well, he goes through all of the theoretical implications, the religious implications, the financial implications, the political implications of disclosure. It's very clear that there will be a small percentage of the population that won't be able to handle this reality. But I don't think that's a large population. I think it's under 12%. Very small.
I think the same thing at this point, that it wouldn't be as many as they think it would be.
No, I don't think so.
I remember hearing about this a long time ago. This is probably in the 90s, where I remember hearing about a study that was done through an institute. I can't remember the name of the institute at this time, but
the Brookings Institute.
Yeah, the Brookings Institute. That basically, once if disclosure ever happened, that it would be huge ramifications and where institutions would crumble. But that was then, and this is now. What's your viewpoint on that? Do you think if we were to have disclosure that our society would grind to a halt, or is this something that most people are prepared for?
That's what comes back to the quote unquote acclimation process, right? Over the past 7 years, they've been doing this slow drip to get the general public acclimated to this reality through motion pictures, TV, articles, magazines, radio, everything. It's blitzed all over the world. Now, the other thing is, there's a number of reports within the Stringfield dictation notes and in the status reports where there's this movie that gets shopped around to different Air Force bases. And it's a 6-minute film clip. This has been seen at multiple Air Force bases around the country. It's been confirmed. There's multiple reports of this, where it depicts ET bodies on a slab. And then it cuts to another scene where they show you a dish-shaped craft. And then they cut to another scene where they show you the interior that has display panels and switches and star charts on the display panel. And then when the movie's over, there's an Air Force general that cuts the projector, turns it off, the lights come back up, and there's no debrief whatsoever. And this has been shopped around to different Air Force bases. So what they do is they bring these military pilots and these ace pilots. They show them this movie clip. They turn the lights back on. There's no debrief. And what it appears to be is a trial or test balloon to gauge their reaction. And so their thought is, if our top military pilots can't handle this new reality, how much more so would the general public not be able to handle this reality? This could be what they're doing. They're using this trial balloon, and it has been confirmed in multiple Air Force bases.
Wow. Yeah, the slow trip. I like the way you word that, because that's exactly what I kind of how I kind of envision what's happening. Because I know that I don't know how. I guess the mainstream people who aren't like me and talk about the paranormal and podcasts and stuff like that. They're having conversations about this. This is that conversation I'm having with coworkers, people who aren't listening to UFO podcasts and on UFO Twitter and all that. They're in the lunchroom and they're talking about, the declassification of things and the Tic Tacs, and all of these things are being talked about. So there's definitely some kind, like you said, a drip, some information that's being released. But as we talked about on this show, it seems like it's really hard to tell whether we're getting disinformation or real information. So what, in your opinion, what is going on that? Are they breaking it slowly, or are we getting false information?
Very good question. Well, we recently had the congressional hearings July of last year, and David Grush talked about an ongoing UFO crash retrieval program. So this has been a year. It's been a year later, and where are we? Where is the evidence? Where are the photographs? Where are the bodies? What about all the talk about being in a skiff and getting to? Here we are. We're still a year, and we're just past this second year now where they killed the legislation. So we're almost back to square one again. And it's
I just saw something from Representative Tim Burchett the other day too about basically having the same reaction that was happening over a year ago. Like, hey, we need to be able to have access to this information, and we can't have access to it. But at this point, it's not making the headlines on the news like it did anymore. So now we essentially have congressmen and women who are being left out in the cold, being like, hey, we can't find out this information we need information about. But at this time, you know, all the major news networks have kind of moved on from the subject. So I don't know, you know, what we're going to get from this in the long run.
Right. It's not going to be easy to crack this. It's very clear. A lot of people have gone down this road and still not landed the plane on this. That's why the first-hand military witnesses are so important to find. And, you know, Leonard started tracking these people a long time ago. The events that they were involved in were in the 40s and 50s and 60s. A lot of these people are no longer with us. There might be a handful left, and that's what we have to work with. And so that's why it's so timely that we do this now before it's too late.
So the other question I have on here to get your opinion on this is, so why release that information at all? Like, you're working through the 80s and 90s, and you're coming out of Project Blue Book, where basically it seems like the government's agenda was to discredit anybody who had any kind of UFO sighting, any kind of UFO experience. And they did a very good job of that, I feel like. They were able to label everybody as kooks and outliers and Uncle Joe who had too much moonshine. And then they didn't talk about the credible cases, and they highlighted the hoax cases. Right. So they did a very good job of discrediting the UFO community. So why now all of a sudden declassify that information and create this scenario anyway?
Well, one reason is that they want to basically, a lot of these quote unquote UFO sightings are to hide our own deep black programs and paint them with the UFO brush. Now, that is not popular within this field at all. They don't want to talk about that. But the U.S. Air Force, the United States military would love nothing more for everyone to believe that everything we're seeing out there is ET. When in point of fact, we've got black triangles, we've got platforms, we've got boomerang-shaped craft that are ours, built by American workers in classified facilities scattered throughout the United States, primarily in the West. But this is going on, and they want everyone to believe that all of this is ET. What we're looking at here could be upwards of 90% are our own craft. Now, there is a core of reality to this phenomenon because it dates back to the 1850s. We have reports that the Romans encountered flying shields, so we can't say that everything is man-made. However, it's very clear at this point that a significant majority of what people are reporting as ETs are in point of fact our own deep black programs.
Okay.
I've been feeling like that for quite some time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so let's continue on here. This is C-119 flying boxcars, Sierra Madre Valley, Mexico, prior to 1951. I'm thinking this was 1948. Our source is an engineer in highway construction. Page 32 in Leonard's book. At least 2 bodies were recovered. This thing was not a large craft. It was 9 feet in diameter. Now, the next question is, how do we know it was 9 feet in diameter? It's a mathematical certainty we know that, because if you take a tape measure and you measure the interior wall thickness of the cargo bay of the C-119, it's 9 feet 10 inches wide. You have to allow 5 inches of clearance on either side, and that gives you a 9-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. So whatever this thing was, it was not large. This was a small craft. So here's Rudy's drawing that shows you them loading the craft into the clamshell bay doors of the C-119. And I'm going to go to the full color rendering here by Joseph, and you can see the kind of this whole site coming into play here. I'll do another advancement so that we can zoom into the right side of the illustration and blow up the actual loading process. And that's what you see here. So again, this is not a large craft. We're talking about at least 3 bodies recovered. And I'm going to go to the next slide, and this shows you what the bodies look like. Now, they were small, they were burnt, and when the primary eyewitness, he said in the report, when he knelt down to touch their skin, their faces, their skin came off on his fingers. And that's what happened on this. So this was not for the faint of heart. This is a gruesome scene, but this is what's being reported within the Stringfield witness collection here. Very quickly, something going on July 7th, 1948, 30 miles south of Laredo, Texas. I won't go into all the details here. This is the blow up. X marks the spot with a triangle here, 30 miles south of Laredo, Texas. I will mention that some of the deepest black programs within the military industrial complex is where we go in by force and we steal these craft out from under the noses of other governments. This has gone on before. This has happened multiple times. All right, next one. Naval Air Station, Sunnyvale, California, 1950, Hangar 1. Couple points here. Number one, this hangar still exists. You can actually go in this hangar. It is so large, it has its own weather. That's how big this thing. During World War II, they used to store blimps in this thing. You could put multiple blimps in this hangar. That's how huge this thing is. Now, our source for this case is a radar operator. This is case B5, page 57 in the book. So what he does is he kind of goes through this double door and he walks into this hangar. What does he see? A 100-foot diameter dish-shaped craft sitting on the hangar floor. It had a low-rise dome. There was a series of porthole windows wrapped around the outer circumference. He's challenged by a guard, immediately told to get out of here, which he did. But he did see this. Later, he told his mother, quote, "It was certainly no aircraft of ours." This was his assessment back in 1950. Here's our full color rendering by Evan to give you an idea of what this looks like within this hangar. Something like this was seen back in 1950. Hundreds at Farmington report large force of flying saucers. Albuquerque Journal, March 18th, 1950. Now, why is any of this important? Because during the early 1950s, there was a standing order by our Air Force to our pilots to shoot these things down. So this is Cincinnati Enquirer, July 29th, 1952. Shoot saucers down. Jet pilots so ordered in 24-hour air alert. Jets keeping 24-hour alert for saucers on the saucer trail. Pilots told shoot them down. Jets on 24-hour alert to shoot down saucers. This is the type of aircraft that they used for the attempted intercepts, F-94 Starfires. Now, I also want to mention that they had gun cameras on these things too. They got all this stuff on camera, and none of these things have ever been released. None of them have ever been released. And this has been going on for decades. If you want to see these type aircraft, 2 places to do it. Number one, in the West, Pima Air and Space Museum, Tucson, Arizona. You'll see the aircraft with the rocket flaps in the closed position. In the Midwest, if you go to the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, same make and model of aircraft with the rocket flaps in the retracted position, so you can see the launch tubes. So these are 2 places where you can actually see the aircraft they use to go chase after these things. And this is Rudy's drawing that we came up with to show you what the intercept may have looked like. Now, this was so prevalent at the time, and this is my kind of full color rendering of what these intercepts may have looked like. This went on. It was so prevalent that my good friend Frank Ficino wrote a book about this. Shoot Them Down, the Flying Saucer Air Wars of 1952. There is absolutely no doubt. It's never been contested. Air Force doesn't want to talk about it. We lost multiple planes and we lost multiple pilots during the 1950s. They later rescinded that order because they were losing pilots and planes. The Air Force does not like to talk about this, but in this book, he documents with Air Force paperwork, documentation, references, very well done. So bottom line is this did go on. This did happen. We lost multiple planes here.
With a board by Stanton Friedman.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Here is a letter from Mildred Bissell, October 2nd, 1979, to Leonard Stringfield. Here's what she writes. I heard you speak at the MUFON Symposium in Dayton last year, and I'm interested in your research on retrievals of the third kind. I gave a talk at a local library last week, and in the discussion period following, a fellow told me that when he was a gunner in the Air Force, he had emptied his guns on a UFO and had taken pictures with his gun camera that clearly showed the shells exploding against the side of the craft. He said the camera was taken off the wing of his plane when it landed and the pictures developed. At 2 a.m., a couple of military policemen came and got him out of bed and took him to the base auditorium. They ran the 17 seconds of movie of the UFO over and over and questioned him and two other crew members until 10 a.m. He was warned never to tell anyone what had happened. He said, I had a wife and family, a good job, and a lot to lose. He seemed afraid of the CIA and wouldn't even give me his name. So here we've got this case of this pilot that unloaded entire magazines of shells on this thing, hit the side of the craft. They got it all on gun camera, was never released to the public. And this went on for decades. They've got thousands of these things.
Wow.
Absolutely.
All right.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say for everyone who's listening out there, everyone who's in chat, if you have a question for Michael, go ahead and get that in. We got about 10 minutes or so left. So if you have some questions you want to ask, make sure you get them in chat and we will get those across before we head out for tonight. Once again, thank you for everyone who's hanging out in here. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us and we hope you're enjoying the show. So we got a little bit more time left. Okay. So let's see what else we can find out here.
I think we got time for one more here. So this is Classified Materials Library, unknown U.S. Air Force Base. Our witness is a former military officer. This is page 212, 213 in the book. Now, this gentleman had the correct security clearance that gave him access to this library. He started going through these file drawers. He opened up one of the drawers, pulled out one of the manila folders, and what he saw inside, number one, was a report that talked about UFO crash retrievals. There was an 8x10 glossy photograph depicting a 36-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that came down somewhere in Farmington, New Mexico prior to 1950. There was a pencil-sized hole in one of these porthole windows that was connected to the upper dome of the craft itself. So I thought, let me see if I can do a color rendering of what this may have looked like. Something like this was seen by this gentleman at this Classified Materials Library. Couple of key points here. Military officer had the correct security clearance, which gave him access to a classified materials library. Report seen by witness made reference to crashes and that bodies were recovered. In addition, diamond-tipped drill bits and acetylene torches were used to gain access to the interior of the craft. Eventually, technicians were able to gain access to the interior by way of a small entry hatch. The report said, referring to the door, that it was almost as if the material of the craft liquefied and then solidified again. So this is something that I've heard about multiple times, where when you look at the exterior skin of these vehicles, they have these entryway hatches, and the seams are so fully integrated into the skin as to be imperceptible. You can't even put a razor blade into these seams whatsoever. So it's almost like it's this Terminator 3, Terminator 2 liquid metal thing here. One more, Pentagon 1952 off-limits room. This is a Pentagon office worker, page 152 in the book. This is case one. So we've got our office worker. She goes down to this basement at the Pentagon, and she kind of goes into this room by accident. It's dark, it's dingy. They've got some cardboard boxes off to the right. She kind of makes a 90-degree turn. What does she see? She sees a pickled alien in a large glass jar. And she's shocked. She can't believe it. She's completely shocked. Within 5 seconds, she feels this hand on her arm. It's a military guard telling her to get out of here immediately. She's not supposed to be in there, but she did see this. So I thought, let's see if we can do an accurate color rendering. And this is what I came up with just to show what this may have looked like at the Pentagon in 1952 by this office worker here. Now, there's been a little bit of, pushback. Was there really a basement at the Pentagon? Is there a basement at the Pentagon? Turns out, yes, there is. And no one less than former Vice President Dick Cheney got lost in the basement at the Pentagon. So
did Dick Cheney find the pickled alien too? I wonder.
That's a good question. We got to ask him about that. Peninsula Times Tribune, March 25th, 1989. New defense chief gets lost in the Pentagon basement. So he's at the upper section of the Pentagon, and he went into the elevator thinking he was going to get let off to get to his car. But when the doors opened up, he walked out, and he was in the basement. He got temporarily lost, but yes, in point of fact, there is a basement at the Pentagon. That tracks with our witness who saw this pickle alien in a glass jar. So what I want to do in this presentation is just to give you a brief overview of some of these important crash retrieval cases that were picked up and relayed by firsthand military witnesses that Leonard Stringfield had talked to and had documented. And the whole point of all this is to preserve an important part of our national history from the use of these defined and refined drawings, and then finish up with full color renderings. And thank you for allowing me to be on your program tonight.
We got to talk for quite some time, and I feel like we just barely scratched the surface. We didn't even make it past 1951.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the slide count. I can tell there's a whole lot more. Thank you so much for sharing that information.
How far have you gotten in his cases with your
well, he passed away in 94, so that's where those cases kind of end. But I've got cases going up to 1997 and 2001. Those are my. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Are you still working on creating all the renderings for all of those?
I'm always trying to refine. I'm always trying to refine this presentation with more details, more drawings, more sketches, everything. I want this to be, this is our history. We paid for all of this, whether people want to admit it or not. This is our history, and it's important to document this before all the witnesses are gone.
Yeah. And then we shared your YouTube link.
Sure.
What do you have going on over there that people might be interested in watching?
Sure. My YouTube channel is called Michael Schratt. It's just my name. Once a week, I do a presentation where I've got new PowerPoints in there, historical cases documented, all the paperwork, all the documentation, full color renderings. I do that kind of like once a week. I have a book called Dark Files, a pictorial history of lost, forgotten, and obscure UFO encounters. There's 61 fully illustrated cases there that are all documented. I give you the references of where you can verify this on their own, and that's something that's available up on Amazon.
Awesome. We have that link shared too.
Cool.
We got like 3 minutes left. What's one of your favorites, your favorite cases?
I like the crash retrieval case that talks about the U.S. Marine in 1963 who guarded a flying saucer at an undisclosed military facility for 2 weeks. This thing was 40 feet in diameter, about 15 feet high. It looked like a fat hamburger, all polished aluminum. It was sitting on scaffolding. There was these elliptical windows wrapped around the outer circumference. He guarded it for 2 weeks. He took a photograph of it with a Minox camera. We were this close to getting that photograph, but it was lost in a flood back in '83. The last day he was there, he was seeing it moved onto a flatbed trailer. They covered it up with a tarp and they moved it to the next location. So obviously what they're doing is they're moving these assets from one location to the next so that one person doesn't know the whole story. That's one way they keep this under wraps.
Yeah. Frosty, did you have a question?
Well, I think we're running out of time. There was one thing I saw on your website. I did want to say we had a bunch of comments here. CM said this could go on for at least another hour. Please bring Michael back. We had so many other people. Amazing job on writing and full color, Michael. That was from Hoaxsters. Keisha said this has been amazing. when are you coming back for more? So it seems like a lot of people enjoyed the show. Thank you so much, Michael.
Sure.
We hope that you are willing to come back in the future and
Absolutely.
talk to us a little bit more about this, because there's one case I want to hear about specifically, and that's I saw on your website a case about a secret base at Fort Hood, Texas.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
We lived there.
I was stationed there, so I'd love to hear about Fort Hood.
Our middle child was born there.
Wonderful. Wow. Okay. Yeah, we can do that. We can do.
Yeah,
we got enough information to make it to the next ice age here, so no problem.
I think so. Yeah, could have 20 more shows.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on and speaking with us. There's a lot of really great information and a lot to kind of think about and ponder, I think, to be honest.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone who's out there listening to the podcast over in podcast land, over in YouTube land. Thank you so much for watching the episode. Thank you for hanging out with us. Please give the likes up, to subscribe. If you're listening to a podcast, if you can give a review, do those things. It helps other people find this wonderful program and hear the wonderful guests. We have one every week, like Michael Schratt. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you all next time. And for everyone who's still out there in chat land, we are going to go
Erica is on.
Erica is on. That's like a red alert.
She hasn't been on in like 2 months or 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a must raid situation.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll send everybody out to go see
red alert. Wow. Yeah. Thanks, Alyson, again for being on tonight. We always appreciate you coming on with your moon update.
Yes. All right. We are getting ready to raid out. We're going to go say hi to our friend Erica. Take care, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow night, right, Jenny, on the Medium Jenny Lee stream? All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
And we'll see you guys next time.